Disguised as a joke, this single dad CEO's proposal shocked everyone and changed her life forever. Jake leaned against his car, the sun sinking below the horizon, illuminating his features in a thin, golden hue. He rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of the day settle into his bones. As the CEO of a tech startup, he had often reveled in the thrill of the hustle. But tonight, in the quiet suburb that was supposed to be home, he felt a familiar sense of dread lurking beneath the surface. Emma was waiting at home, and he couldn't shake the thought that he was teetering on a precipice, balancing his career and his love for her. Corporate pressures gnawed at him, whispering doubts about his adequacy as both a father and a leader. Was he chasing the right dreams for them? He flicked the ignition, the engine sputtering to life as he drove, fingers gripping the wheel tightly. Memories flooded back, his childhood spent grappling with financial struggles, where every decision made around the dinner table carried profound weight. His parents had sacrificed so much to provide for him, instilling in him the belief that success meant security. Could he offer that same security for Emma? Every day, he surveyed the landscape of corporate ambition with a sense of urgency, the echoes of his upbringing urging him to protect what he had built. But the reminder of how easily it could slip away felt like a jagged edge beneath his skin. As Jake navigated the evening traffic, he reflected on Sarah, the sharp data analyst in her 30s facing relentless headwinds in their male-dominated industry. He'd seen her potent ideas dismissed, her passion snuffed out like a candle under a windstorm. A flicker of guilt snaked through him. Did he hold some responsibility for not standing up for her? The retreat at the lakeside resort loomed ahead, promising hope yet fraught with apprehension, a place where he would either harness their collective talents or potentially stifle them. Before he arrived, he mentally rehearsed how it could play out. But nothing could prepare him for the moment, caught between a playful jest and a profound desire for change. At the conference room, laughter peppered the atmosphere, a facade of camaraderie veiling the tension. It was there he jokingly proposed a partnership with Sarah, a way to shake up the old boys' club surrounding them. The laughter faded too quickly, replaced by baffled expressions and the edge of ridicule. But then he saw Sarah's eyes, sparks ignited by his boldness, caught between her hesitance and growing determination. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she passionately detailed her vision, the room's energy shifted. Skepticism hung heavy in the air, eyes narrowing, voices whispering dismissively. Jake's heart raced, empathy colliding with fear. Would standing by Sarah and supporting her mean risking his well-earned position? Each nod and sideways glance from the team felt like knives encircling them. He wanted to leap up and champion her brilliance, but the tightness in his chest threatened to suffocate him, anchoring him to the safety of the status quo. In that tumultuous moment, he stood at a crossroad, the weight of expectations bore down, tugging him toward familiar comfort while the scream for change lurked like a haunting melody. With every second ticking by, Jake felt the pressure intensify, chaos threatening his beliefs on both sides. Could he relinquish personal security in favor of an uncertain future? As Sarah continued to unravel her dreams, the fear settled like concrete. Would he obliterate both their paths in an attempt to forge a new one? The stakes had never been so high, and with a scandal brewing outside, could he truly defend what mattered? Jake felt like a marionette caught in a tangle of strings, each one pulling him in a different direction. There was Sarah's enthusiasm, sparking a flicker of hope within him, contrasting sharply against the weight of doubt festering in his mind. As he tried to piece together his next steps, the eyes of his team bore into him, radiating expectations as palpable as a spark that teases the air before a thunderstorm. The laughter from the earlier proposal still echoed in his ears, but it had transformed from a joyous sound to a haunting reminder of his vulnerability. What if this was an inflection point, one where he could either empower those around him or slide unceremoniously into the realm of complacency? The room seemed to tighten around him, walls painted with skepticism, the glossy whiteboard now serving as a canvas for his doubts. Finally, Sarah paused, closing her laptop. The shift in energy was immediate. "Jake," she addressed him directly, her voice steady and charged. "You floated an idea. Are we going to let it sink, or are we going to swim with it?" Her challenge was both an invitation and a reflection of his own hesitation. He sensed an opportunity, but what would it cost him? The tension in the room hung like a heavy fog as Jake took a deep breath, trying to summon clarity amid the chaos of his thoughts. His internal monologue spiraled. Was it possible for him to risk nurturing a bold vision when the repercussions could threaten everything he'd built? But as he looked at Sarah, her eyes illuminated with a determination he hadn't expected, something within him began to shift. "Let us do it," he said, his voice carrying confidence he wasn't entirely sure he felt. "Let us partner, Sarah." The words fell from his lips like the first drop of rain in a drought, bringing instantaneous relief. A subtle gasp spread through the room, closely followed by a murmur of disbelief. For the first time, he realized that this was more than a mere partnership, it was a challenge against the currents that had long stifled creativity. This was his chance to redefine not only the company culture but also his understanding of leadership. Could he take this step without losing himself? To embrace a dual role not just as a CEO but as an ally, an advocate? The potential ramifications loomed large, yet the blossoming hope on Sarah's face suggested the possibility of something remarkable. Glimpses of early morning meetings under flaring fluorescent lights shifted in his mind, illuminated by shared laughter and collective brainstorming sessions instead of weary sighs and dismissive glances. He could envision a more vibrant workplace, where a diverse exchange of ideas thrived, something he had long yearned for but had been too afraid to challenge. However, as excitement swelled, so too did an undercurrent of anxiety. The repercussions of his decision stretched before him like a widening canyon, threatening to swallow him whole. What would the board think? Would they support this shift, or would they view it as a betrayal of tradition? The thought roared through him like an engine out of control. "We'll need a detailed plan, Sarah. Timing will be crucial. Let us sketch this out further." His voice now brimming with determination, Jake took the lead, an anchor in the swirling chaos. He watched as Sarah began to illuminate her path forward, inspired but puzzled. The complexities of such an initiative would require careful navigation, but Jake was aware this was only the beginning. As they began to strategize, he felt the burden of that inner conflict start to morph into a sense of purpose. Yet, somewhere in the back of his mind, shadows still loomed. Strengthening his resolve would mean standing up against faceless opposition and confronting underlying biases from the very business he had nurtured. He yearned for transformation but wasn't certain he was prepared for the potential backlash. The familiarity of strife didn't daunt him, but the guilt of leaving others behind gnawed. Amidst the burgeoning excitement of that initial spark, the realization hit him. Hard today's decisions wouldn't just alter Sarah's trajectory, they would forever shift his notion of self-worth and success. It was a paradox that promised to test the very foundations of who Jake believed he was. Success is no longer just about me, he thought, internalizing the significance of this moment. But was he truly ready to embrace that change? As that thought echoed in his mind, a new question arose: how far was he willing to go to challenge the status quo and protect those he admired? Jake's mind raced as they began drafting the detailed plan. Every word Sarah wrote was a reminder of the uncharted path they were embarking upon. He felt alive with ideas, yet equally burdened by the weight of uncertainty. The very thought that he might redefine both his role and the company's culture sent ripples of anxiety through him. "Jake," Sarah's voice snapped him back into focus. "We need to ensure that the board understands the more collaborative approach we're proposing. We can't just present it as a new idea, we need to frame it as a necessary evolution." Her confidence helped bolster him, igniting a fire he thought had long been extinguished. This was about more than corporate survival, it was about fostering an environment that welcomed creativity over conformity. "Right," he nodded, feeling a flicker of excitement. "Let us highlight how this can enhance productivity and innovation. If we present concrete data showing the success of collaborative teams, that might help ease their apprehension. As the hours unfolded, they melded statistics with heartfelt anecdotes, showcasing a future where every team member felt heard, valued, and inspired to share their ideas. The process breathed new life into Jake's sense of purpose. The clerical confines of his former role slipped away as he began envisioning himself at the helm of a more dynamic ship, yet amid the high hopes, the specter of resistance loomed larger each moment. Jake had memories of boardroom debates that turned into fierce power struggles. He imagined the faces of those who were firmly entrenched in traditional ideologies, those who believed change would destabilize the very foundation upon which they built their careers. That night, unable to shake the restlessness, he replayed old board meetings in his mind, dissecting every comment made, every sidelong glance exchanged. As he lay in bed, the ceiling fan spun in a lazy circle above him, mirroring the churn of thoughts in his mind. How far was he willing to challenge not just the status quo but the people he had worked with for years? The haunting echo of his past decisions intruded, tainting memories of camaraderie with a lingering question: was he betraying those who believed in the current structure? He rolled onto his side, staring into the dark. The juxtaposition of his feelings struck him. A desire to galvanize change clashed violently with a longing for acceptance. He realized this new path required greater vulnerability than he had anticipated. As days slipped into weeks, he began to emerge in subtle ways. At team meetings, he encouraged open discussions, asking for input that had previously gone unacknowledged. In the hallway, he shared jokes and conversations about life beyond work, slowly dismantling the walls he had inadvertently built. Each small gesture felt like coaxing a flower to bloom, nurturing an atmosphere that allowed bold ideas to sprout. Yet, with each step, Jake's heart raced. What if this was too little too late? The thought wormed itself into his psyche, challenging his confident facade. Every colleague's subtle reaction held greater significance now. Were they supportive, or were they skeptical? As the board meeting approached, Jake wrestled with his decision. He would no longer only focus on metrics and charts. He had to share his vision, his personal stake in the team's success. Success isn't only about the company's bottom line, he pondered aloud to Sarah. It's about the fulfillment of the people who drive that success. And that will resonate with the board, she replied encouragingly. Authenticity is powerful. In that moment, Jake felt the stirrings of a daring resolve. It was not enough to just dare to change, he had to embody that shift. But as the meeting loomed closer, Jake's mind raced again. Would he be able to withstand the scrutiny? The stakes felt higher than ever before. The truth began to dawn on him: this single pitch would not only determine his role but also redefine his capacity for leadership and connection. As he locked eyes with Sarah, he felt like a tightrope walker teetering between the worlds he had known and the future he dared to envision. But the time had come. He was ready to face them. The question remained, however: would he find acceptance or face rejection from the very people he hoped to inspire? The room was filled with a tense energy as Jake stepped into the boardroom. The stark contrast between his usual discomfort and the thrill of potential change surged through him. He took a deep breath, steadying himself, the air bustling with anticipation. Each board member settled into their seats, eyes turning toward him. Was this the moment he'd been waiting for, or was he simply inviting scrutiny? Thank you all for being here today, Jake started, his voice stronger than he imagined it would be. The nerves that had previously gripped his throat began to subside as he focused on the faces before him. I am excited to share our vision for an evolved corporate culture, one that fosters collaboration, innovation, and an empowered workforce. As he spoke, Jake noticed the subtle shifts in expressions around the table. Curiosity seemed to emerge in some, while others bore the weight of skepticism. He pressed on, strategically intertwining the heart of the proposal with relatable anecdotes, sharing stories of teams at their best: united, transformative, engaged. Imagine a workplace where every idea counts, he continued, drawing from the statistics he and Sarah had carefully curated. Studies show that companies embracing collaborative practices increase their productivity by as much as 20. This is not just a theory, it is a proven pathway to growth. But doubt crept back in as he met the unwavering gaze of Mark, one of the staunchest traditionalists in the room. The very presence of his skepticism felt like a physical weight. Jake's heart raced, thinking about the challenge that lay ahead, and the implications of the decision to embrace vulnerability. His plans were laid bare, open for dissection. "Jake," Mark interjected, leaning forward, "while your intentions may be admirable, how can we trust that shifting to a collaborative framework won't hinder our current operations? Our success has been driven by clear hierarchies and strict protocols." The demeanor in the room subtly shifted, others nodded, aligning with Mark's cautious stance. Feeling the pressure, Jake sensed the walls closing in. The stakes were higher than he anticipated. How could he defend a vision against a fortified legacy? In his mind, Jake quickly scrolled through what success truly meant. The surface was only the metrics, but the depths were the people. He had to break through that barrier. "Because success isn't measured in just hard numbers," he replied, finding his voice. "It's about individual fulfillment and team engagement. When people feel heard and valued, their productivity naturally follows. We can enhance our operational capacity not by clinging to strict hierarchies, but by building a culture of trust." Jake's words hung in the air, both hopeful and heavy. A few murmured amongst themselves while others remained stoic. He pressed further, refusing to retreat into silence. This was a pivotal moment for him and the entire company culture. "I am deeply invested in this change because I believe in the potential of our teams. I have seen what can happen when people feel inspired. If we share ownership of our goals, growth will flourish organically. But I cannot just ask you to take my word for it. I'm willing to pilot this approach on a smaller scale in our upcoming project. Let us measure its success together, and if it fails, I take full responsibility." The room was silent for a heartbeat before a mixture of responses erupted. Outrage blended with intrigue, and scrutiny sparked conversations that electrified the sterile environment. Jake felt a surge of adrenaline. The tide was shifting. Could it be that his authenticity had connected with at least some in the room? Yet, as the discussions deepened, Jake felt the intensity of the moment. Trust wasn't just about words, it was about action, and he was on the verge of a reckoning not just within the company but within himself. He realized he would need allies, those who would stand with him in this evolution. As he locked eyes with Sarah across the room, he sensed her unwavering support and shared resolve. But a flicker of uncertainty raced through him. Had he truly paved the way for acceptance, or had he merely opened the floodgates to conflict? Discussions now swirled around him, momentum building, but as Jake navigated the waves of dialogue, a haunting thought rooted itself in his mind. Could he turn this spark into lasting change, or would he find himself standing alone at the end of this journey, with blood pounding in his ears? Jake prepared for the potential storm ahead. It was apparent that this was far from over. But as the meeting progressed, the question echoed in his mind: could he withstand the pushback and ultimately emerge as the leader he desperately wished to become? Jake lingered after the meeting, the tension still palpable in the air as he gathered his notes. The conversations around him seemed to fade into a distant murmur while he replayed the exchange with Mark, scrutinizing his own reaction. Had he been convincing enough? He could still see Mark's brow furrowed, skepticism etched into his features. But Jake had done more than just speak. He had offered a challenge, a possibility for transformation, not just within the company, but within himself. He sketched a rough outline for the pilot project, details swirling in his mind like colorful threads demanding to be woven into a cohesive tapestry. His fingers brushed against the whiteboard as he daydreamed of collaborative brainstorming sessions, tangible applications of creativity springing to life in real time. Yet, shadows of doubt whispered at his periphery, questioning if he had the fortitude to lead such change amid resistance. Turning away from the board, Jake spied Sarah engrossed in conversation with a few other team members. The camaraderie she exuded drew him in. Perhaps he needed to harness that energy. Approaching her, he pushed aside his insecurities, deciding he couldn't bear this weight alone. "Hey," he said, his voice steady despite the flutter in his chest. "Can we talk about what just happened? About making this vision more tangible?" Her face broke into an encouraging smile, but Jake saw a flicker of concern behind it. Of course. What are you thinking? I want to build momentum for this pilot, he replied. We need a team, a few trusted partners who can see the bigger picture. I want to showcase our approach in the upcoming project and measure its impact. But I need your insights on board. Sarah leaned back slightly, her expression thoughtful. You realize they're going to be watching closely? Any misstep, and Mark will capitalize on it. She paused, biting her lip before continuing, but if anyone can pull this off, it's you. I've seen how you lead. Let us outline the scope and get a small group together. A surge of gratitude flooded Jake. Sarah believed in him, and for the first time, he felt the weight of hope lifting. They spent the next hour brainstorming, hashing out tangible strategies that would allow for authentic collaboration while effectively showcasing the results Jake had promised. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting warm light through the office windows, Jake's resolve solidified. Ideas swirled around him, and just like that, he felt ignited again. This wasn't merely a fight against skepticism, this was about establishing a new legacy not just for the company, but for himself. That night, while he sat at home reviewing their notes, his phone buzzed. It was a series of messages from Sarah, detailing a plan to present their concept to a selected group of team members. They were ready to take the next step. Yet, lurking beneath his eagerness, a nagging question returned: what if the pushback was more than he anticipated? What if stakes heightened and left him vulnerable? Jake gazed at the notes scattered across his dining table. This was no longer just a proposal, it was a movement waiting to take form. The fear of failure lingered, but he now also felt the exhilaration of potential achievements illuminating that fear, forcing him to confront the dissension. As he prepared for the meeting the next day, trifles of uncertainty tinged his excitement. If this pilot project were to succeed, it would be a door into a future he had only dared to dream. However, if it failed, would he crumble under the weight of his own aspirations? With a steadying breath, he took one last look at his notes and firmly resolved to stick to his vision. It was time to step into the storm, fortified by both his ambition and allies. But what remained was a growing realization: he was on the precipice of challenge, and with it, the fate of his career and his identity was at stake. What truly lay ahead as they prepared to introduce this revolutionary approach? Would this be the moment that defined him or the catalyst for his undoing? Jake woke to the sound of his alarm blaring, the weight of the upcoming meeting crashing down on him as he rolled out of bed. Last night's resolve seemed elusive in the dawn light, competing with the gnawing doubts that had planted roots in his mind. He glanced at his notes scattered across the table, remnants of inspiration now tainted by the specter of potential failure. After showering, he stood before the mirror, scrutinizing his reflection. Each day blurred into the next, but today felt different. Today was a make-or-break moment. Would he emerge as a leader with a vision, or would he flee from the expectations he had created? He had to remind himself, powerful change was often shaped by those brave enough to step forward. He donned a suit that felt heavier than usual, a physical embodiment of the pressure he faced. Sipping his coffee, he couldn't shake the feeling that each sip was laced with uncertainty. Yet, he was committed to the plan he drafted with Sarah. He had to believe it could work. Arriving at the office, he took a few moments to gather himself in the lobby. The blended aroma of fresh coffee and anticipation swirled around him. As he approached the meeting room, a group of familiar faces greeted him, fellow colleagues and friends who agreed to stand by him. Their supportive nods brought him a rush of warmth amid the anxious chill. Once inside, Jake initiated the presentation, his voice steady despite the quickening pulse behind his collar. He launched into the introduction, laying out the vision he had crafted with Sarah. Immediately, the room fell into a focused silence. The bright overhead lights shone down, illuminating not merely the charts on the screen but the resolve burgeoning within him. As the presentation unfolded, Jake quickly embraced the trends and projections he prepared. He invited discussion, fostering an atmosphere where everyone felt empowered to voice their opinions. The conversations that flowed were rich, textured by diverse perspectives. He could see the skepticism begin to fade from some of the faces around the table, replaced by curiosity and, dare he hope, a budding enthusiasm for the change he envisioned. but then Mark interjected, his brow furrowed and tone cutting through the ambience like ice. "Jake, this sounds ambitious, but what are the real risks? We can't afford to waste resources if this doesn't pan out." The room quieted again, and Jake felt the eyes shift to him. It was a challenge layered in doubt, a crossroad that could either elevate him or bury him alive. Taking a deep breath, Jake faced Mark. "Every path we take holds risks, but are we truly living if we don't explore the potential of those risks? The market is shifting, and taking a conservative route may minimize immediate losses but stifle our growth in the long run. This pilot isn't just about metrics, it's about innovation." His words rang out, infused with an intensity that surprised even himself. The pause that followed felt eternal, amplifying the tension. Jake's heart raced, but he held his ground. This moment encapsulated everything he was fighting for, not just in relation to his work but for his identity, echoing the battles he faced personally as a father, a leader, and a man seeking purpose. When the discussions resumed, it became clear that Mark's challenge only solidified support for Jake's vision. The team rallied around ideas, brainstorming how to mitigate the risks while amplifying possible outcomes. What had started as a daunting presentation evolved into a collaboration. Even Mark softened his stance, suggesting adjustments rather than outright dismissal. Jake felt alive as the energy swirled in the room. He hadn't just led a meeting but orchestrated a symphony of ideas. The pilot project transformed from an abstract plan into a collective goal, one that had sparked hope and creativity. As the meeting came to a close, a tentative buzz filled the air, a contrast to the dread that had loomed before. Jake realized he had not only navigated skepticism but cultivated an environment ripe for innovation. Yet even as optimism surged, a new thought emerged. He had rallied people, but would they stand firm when challenges arose? Jake exited the meeting room filled with inspiration and anticipation, but a realization loomed: he had still only precipitated change. The real work would begin soon, and that was both exhilarating and terrifying. Was he ready to face the inevitable turbulence coming his way? As he glanced around the office bustling with activity, a new question pierced his thoughts. Could he continue to rise amid potential conflict, or was he dangling on the edge, one decision away from either triumph or total collapse? The stakes had just escalated. Jake navigated the corridors with a renewed sense of purpose, his mind racing through the possibilities sparked by the meeting. Although the initial anxiety had transformed into something akin to exhilaration, a nagging doubt tugged at him: would he truly be able to follow through? The chatter around him blurred into white noise as he lingered near his office, a sanctuary of sorts. He sank into his chair, the leather cool against his skin, and began to revisit the notes he had crafted with Sarah. They weren't just data points, they were manifestations of a vision that could propel the company forward. This wasn't about him anymore. It was about the team, the potential they could unlock together. He wished he could translate this intensity into every corner of the organization. How could he ensure that the spark ignited in the meeting continued to burn brightly? Minutes turned to hours as he immersed himself, scribbling in a notepad, channeling his thoughts into actionable strategies. Suddenly, a knock at the door broke his focus. It was Sarah, her expression mirroring the ambition that had enveloped Jake moments before. "Hey, I thought I'd check in," she said, stepping inside. "You seemed fired up in the meeting." "I was, but now it feels overwhelming," Jake admitted, pinching the bridge of his nose. "What if we stumble? What if they lose faith?" Sarah crossed her arms, firm but understanding. "You can't let doubt overshadow what you started today. You've created a foundation. Now you build on it." Her words were the catalyst he needed. She was right. The true test wasn't the presentation but rather the execution of their vision. It was a call to action. Without hesitation, Jake reached for his phone and began to craft a message to the team, proposing weekly check-ins to foster collaboration and maintain momentum. Communication was vital. He couldn't let fear choke the energy they'd cultivated. As he clicked send, a warmth spread through him. This was the shift he needed. The team wasn't just a collection of individuals but a cohesive unit capable of confronting challenges together. The thought ignited a flicker of hope. The next few days were anything but easy. Jake scheduled brainstorming sessions, reached out for feedback, and encouraged his colleagues to share their insights freely. He discovered hidden wells of creativity among the team. One particularly inspired idea from Lisa, a junior analyst, illuminated an approach that hadn't crossed his mind. However, as progress unfolded, so did obstacles. Mark, the skeptic, began to voice concerns again, this time criticizing the viability of the strategies. Each critique stung, and Jake found himself on edge, wrestling with the need for confidence while battling the creeping shadow of self-doubt, but Jake chose not to evade the discomfort. During a team gathering, he stood at the front with Mark, ready to confront the challenge head-on. "I know we face uncertainties, but every strong foundation requires resilience. Let us address those concerns together as they arise. Mark, I value your insights and want this to be an open dialogue." The tension shifted, and the atmosphere pulsed with an unspoken agreement. They were in it together, each willing to support the other. The exchange was more than just ideas, it became a pivotal moment of trust. Wayward anxiety ebbed, replaced by clarity. Still, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that the biggest challenge was yet to come. Each decision he made felt weightier, resonating with the duality of his role as a leader and a father. He sensed that at home, his son sensed his distraction, and he wondered if he was inadvertently sacrificing his paternal role for the corporate one. That evening, he returned home to find his son constructing a makeshift spaceship from cushions and blankets. Watching him play, Jake realized he was not just a corporate leader but a father shaping a future. He recalled the energy from the meeting, the same energy that could invigorate his relationship with his boy. The juxtaposition of his two worlds tugged at him, revealing a quiet desperation to succeed in both while grappling with his fears. There was a lesson in balancing, one he needed to champion both professionally and personally. As the day closed, Jake settled onto the couch, reflecting on the significance of his dual roles. He decided to invite his son into his process of leadership. "How about we build the biggest spaceship together tomorrow?" he proposed, igniting a smile that lit his son's face. Embracing the courage to blend these worlds, Jake felt the resolve in his heart harden. If he could inspire his son as much as he inspired his team, perhaps he wasn't standing on the edge after all. But the uncertainty remained: was this newfound balance sustainable in the face of impending pressures? Would his ambition blind him to the needs of the one person he loved most? As curiosity flared, Jake found himself on the precipice of a decision that could redefine his journey. Would he forge ahead as the leader he aspired to be, or risk losing sight of what truly mattered? The morning sun poured through Jake's office window, illuminating the pages scattered across his desk. As he prepared for the newly scheduled team meeting, his excitement mingled uneasily with the weight of responsibility. Staring out toward the bustling city, he couldn't help but reflect on the delicate balance he was trying to achieve, a balancing act that felt more precarious by the moment that he glanced at his phone, half expecting a text from his son. Instead, he saw an email notification from Mark detailing his latest critiques, a pointed reminder of the obstacles that loomed ahead. "Every strong foundation," Jake murmured to himself, recalling the mantra he'd shared during the last team gathering. But what if the foundation began to crumble under the weight of scrutiny? As the meeting commenced, Jake took a deep breath, summoning the optimism that had fueled him just days earlier. The boardroom, filled with familiar faces, felt more like an arena. "Thanks for gathering today," he started, feeling the anticipation in the air. "I want us all to dive deep into our projects. Let us challenge each other constructively." Halfway through the discussion, Mark's hand shot up, a familiar expression of doubt etched across his face. "I appreciate the enthusiasm, Jake, but what about the financial implications? These ideas could lead to overspending." The bluntness of the critique sent a chill through the room. It was as if a gust of wind had extinguished the flicker of hope Jake had worked so hard to ignite. "Mark, I understand your concerns," Jake replied, steadying his voice as he fought the urge to defend himself aggressively. "But let's explore not just the numbers, but the potential growth these innovations could symbolize." He sensed Mark's skepticism lingering, but he couldn't afford to let it deter the cloud of excitement now gathering around the table. Embracing vulnerability, Jake opened the floor for others to share their thoughts. What surprised him wasn't just the quality of feedback but the palpable shift in the room's atmosphere as colleagues stepped forward. They began offering ideas that balanced innovation with measured risk, presenting a more complete picture to counter Mark's cautious tendencies. Through collective dialogue, Jake not only fostered a collaborative spirit but also cultivated an unexpected allyship among the team. They strategized, building on existing concepts to reinforce their plans, showcasing powerful collective intelligence. Each fresh idea made him feel as if he were bolstering both the project and his own leadership. However, as they worked, Jake couldn't shake the feeling of a growing tension at home, a reminder of the delicate line he was walking with his son. The juxtaposition of these two worlds began to gnaw at him, a harsh reminder of the inherent conflict between devotion to the job and love for family. Could he continue this dual pursuit while still being present at home? Later that day, he found himself at the kitchen table, his son constructing new spaceship designs with an audacity that reminded Jake of his own resolve at work. "What if we made the wings bigger?" Jake suggested, excitement bubbling up inside. His son's eyes lit up with the possibility. "Yeah, and then it can fly higher," his son chimed back, pushing the envelope of creativity. Every time Jake leaned into these moments, he realized how easily inspiration flowed from one realm to the other. He caught himself thinking about how he could harness that same playful ingenuity in the boardroom, but after watching his son work, Jake felt an unsettling hollowness. Was he truly nurturing his child's creativity as he sought innovation in the office? The disparity rattled him. With every passing hour, he found himself questioning how sustainable this balancing act was going to be. The moment of reckoning felt imminent. Where would he stand when the pressures of his roles clashed, and what price would he pay? Contemplating all that remained unresolved, Jake lay awake that night, the stars blinking above as reminders of his dreams fluttered weakly in the night sky. What could he do to solidify both his professional vision and his role as a father? Would it require a disruptive strategy, a risk that could yield profound changes, or perhaps driving both endeavors from the same core philosophy? An unsettling thought occurred to him. What if he wasn't just leading his team but also inadvertently preparing himself for a transformation in his family life? He understood now that the true challenge lay not in choosing between roles, but in intertwining them into a cohesive whole. The time had come to face the potential fallout of this revelation. Is it possible for him to emerge victorious in both arenas without sacrificing himself? The following morning, the air in Jake's office was electric with anticipation. He stood before the whiteboard, doodling rough sketches of ideas he'd collected during the previous day's meeting. Each thought felt like a lifeline, but the excitement was undermined by the nagging feeling that he was still on shaky ground. Drawing from the inspiration ignited by his son, he mentally replayed the exchange they had, creatively constructing strategies in the margins of his mind that could intertwine his roles and responsibilities. Absorbed in his thoughts, Jake hardly noticed the soft knock on his door. Sensing the presence behind him, he turned to find Mia, his project manager, who carried a file in her hands with a serious expression. "Jake, today's presentation is going to be pivotal," she began, her tone carefully measured. "We're facing Mark again. We need a strong front to counter his doubts." Her words were a reminder that while creativity could flourish, resistance was palpable. Jake nodded, his mind pulsating with strategies. "I'm exploring a more integrated approach. What if we frame our financial needs as necessities for growth? Show how innovation leads to sustainability rather than mere expense." Mia considered this and her eyes lit up. "We could incorporate potential returns on investment versus traditional cost analysis. Mark respects hard numbers." In that moment, they were both transformed into a dynamic duo, swiftly brainstorming ways to blend analytical rigor with creative vision. The synergy felt exhilarating, as if they were lighting sparks in the air. They dived deeper into the new proposal, drawing parallels to innovations that had previously revolutionized their sector. Jake could feel the weight on his shoulders beginning to lift, replaced by a growing confidence in their collective abilities, yet beneath his enthusiasm lay a persistent thought: was he being a good father? Could he cement his newfound professional strategies without compromising his duties at home? These questions loomed over him like shadows, darkening his buoyancy. Before the presentation, he couldn't shake the vision of his son, confidently sketching out dreams powered by creativity. He needed to reflect that to his team and to himself. As the clock ticked closer to the meeting, Jake prepared for the dual challenge that awaited him. Between presenting to the board and returning to his son's world of imagination, he craved harmony between both realms. In the conference room, he would have to face Mark's scrutiny, armed with a proposal that embodied both exploration and calculated risk. When the doors of the boardroom opened, the atmosphere felt thick with tension. Mark's familiar expression of skepticism was waiting at the end of the long table. Yet, as Jake presented their combined efforts, he saw an opportunity, a chance to expose the shared narrative that could resonate with all around him. Imagine a future where we not only see our financial metrics, but also how we guide the next generation of leaders to think outside the box, Jake proposed, seizing the moment. This isn't just about numbers, it's about empowering innovation, embracing risk for the sake of growth. The murmurs among the board members intensified, and for a moment, Jake felt a thrill of connection, as if he were not just a CEO presenting a financial analysis, but also a father instilling values of creativity and courage within his son. He dared to confront Mark's skepticism directly. "Mark, I understand your desire for caution, but consider this: what are we building here? Nameless figures, or a legacy of innovation?" A silence fell over the room, punctuated only by Jake's heartbeat reverberating in his ears. Had he just challenged his greatest adversary by drawing from values rooted in home? The internal conflict swelled. Mark's eyes narrowed, and the tension wrapped tightly around them all. Jake felt the spectrum of his responsibilities collide. It was no longer just a professional proposal but a profound personal statement. He had to know, would the board resonate with a vision that transcended cost analysis and venture with him into the realm of possibility? As Jake awaited a response, the stakes felt higher than ever. The moment of truth hung in the air, not just for the project but for his dual commitments as a leader and a father. Just then, the room felt as if it was ready to explode with potential. Their reactions would not just define his professional identity, they would also shape his very essence. Would the outcome free him from his dual conflicts or draw lines deeper than he anticipated? The clock was ticking, and Jake stood on the brink, ready to embrace whatever came next. The days that followed marked a new chapter for Jake, filled with a relentless pursuit of authenticity and innovation. As the pilot project took off, he witnessed remarkable changes within the team dynamics. Colleagues who once hesitated to voice their ideas now shared insights freely, creating an atmosphere of collaboration that ignited creativity. Jake took pride in fostering this environment, fully committing to the vision he championed only weeks before. Each brainstorming session became a celebration of diversity, where every suggestion was met with interest and appreciation. Jake learned to step back, allowing others to shine while guiding them toward shared goals. He recognized that true leadership emerged from empowering others, and watching his colleagues flourish was a potent reminder of that responsibility. Yet, under the gleaming surface of progress, Jake confronted the personal pressures he had faced. The dissonance between his roles as CEO and father had become palpable, especially as evenings turned into late-night working sessions. Still, the image of his son daring to dream with those grand designs of spaceships kept pulling him back toward balance. He saw his son's confidence bloom, and with it, a sense of clarity began to illuminate Jake's path. Resolute, Jake created time in his schedule dedicated solely to being a father. Weekends transformed into co-creative projects, giving his son the space to explore his imagination while teaching him about the blend of work and play. "Think of it like building a spaceship for our dreams," he explained one day while stacking blocks together. "Each block is an idea, and together, we can make it soar." As the words left his lips, a realization struck him: he was not only nurturing his son's potential but solidifying his own growth as a leader who understood the value of connection, resilience, and adaptability. When evaluation day of the pilot project approached, a mix of pride and anticipation coursed through Jake. They were prepared to showcase the tangible results, metrics revealing a marked increase in productivity and creativity. Yet, the specter of Mark's doubts lingered in his mind. The confrontation they had previous weeks felt like a ghost, one that could easily reappear when faced with scrutiny from those who preferred the status quo. The day arrived, and the boardroom buzzed with an air of tension. Armed with reports of progress and stories of transformation, Jake entered the meeting space not just as a CEO but as a father, a man committed to nurturing the future. He recognized the stakes were higher than profits. They involved cultivating a workplace culture that thrived on collaboration instead of fear. As he presented, Jake's confidence radiated from a place of deep understanding and personal investment. "What we have built here isn't just a project," he declared, his voice steady, commanding the room's attention. "It's a foundational shift in how we operate. The risks we took are now paying off in ways that illustrate our commitment to not simply maintain our status but to evolve our legacy. And in doing so, we are fostering an environment where innovation thrives." He glanced at Mark, who sat visibly engaged, but the air still crackled with anticipation. Jake pressed on, "I've learned that leadership is about more than numbers, it's about nurturing the talent we have, empowering brave thoughts to bloom into impactful actions." The board members began to nod, pulling attention away from their skepticism, intrigued by his vision infused with vulnerability and authenticity. Jake could see the spark of curiosity begin to catch fire, transforming doubt into opportunity as he expanded on their findings, sharing anecdotes of colleagues who had stepped forward to share unique ideas that never saw the light of day before. When the discussion turned to questions, Mark, instead of lobbing challenges, began to ask for clarity on specifics of resources required, suggesting subtle refinements to deepen their impact. Jake felt a swell of hope, the contemplative dialogue revealed. A shift, one he had long hoped for. Each inquiry raised the discourse to new heights, building a bridge toward a collaborative future rather than a division. As the meeting drew to a close, the board voted overwhelmingly in favor of adopting the collaborative model. The air hung heavy with a collective breath of relief, excitement, and newfound purpose. Jake felt a thrill course through him, not just for the victory but for what it represented. A personal achievement grounded in leadership that now harmonized with his role as a father. Loyalty from the team strengthened, trust radiated, and as Jake stepped out of the boardroom, a sense of fulfillment washed over him. The weight he had carried about balancing two identities began to lift. He realized he had proven not only his competence as a CEO but also transformed his understanding of success as intertwined with nurturing relationships, and with that reflection, he glanced at his phone, an urge swelling within him. He rushed home, eager to share the moment not just as a leader, but as a dad ready to inspire his child about the importance of resilience and creativity. They could build their spaceship together. This was no longer just a path of professional ambition, it had become a journey of profound personal transformation. Jake had conquered the fears that haunted him, emerging not only as a successful CEO but as a father dedicated to shaping a future rooted in courage, connection, and possibility. If you've experienced this powerful journey of transformation alongside Jake, don't you owe it to yourself to deepen your connection with us? You need to subscribe now. These stories of overcoming are only beginning. Leave a like now to help us spread inspiration and fuel more courageous tales. Don't wait even one more second to share this with at least 5 friends who need to see this profound conclusion. Your support ensures that we continue to bring you exclusive emotional stories that resonate. Comment your thoughts, reactions, and theories about this powerful ending. Your engagement matters. Join us in this journey now.